Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the latest in our series of webinars. Today's webinar is on securing your IBM I future. We're going to discuss IBM disaster recovery and cloud services in good detail today. Tony, if you could move to the next slide, please. So look, my name is Mark Donnellan. I'm the sales director here at Ekco. I've been with the business for just over 8 years. Look after multiple territories within the business. I'm joined today by Ash Giddings, a product manager at Maxava, and Tony Bastian's a product manager at IBM. As I mentioned at the top of the webinar, we're here to discuss disaster recovery services specifically for IBM I series. Today's webinar is being recorded and the slides will be distributed to you afterwards. And during today's presentation, we're also going to conduct some polls. So keep an eye out for those. They should appear on your screen. If they don't, please check the chat box when you see the poll slide. Okay, next slide, Tony, please. So by way of agenda, I'll briefly give an overview of Ekco, who we are, where we've come from, just to give you an idea of some of the scale of the organization. I'm conscious that there are a lot of organizations on here today that haven't done business with us previously. At that point, I'm going to hand over to Ash, who will take you through disaster recovery and IBM I workloads running in the cloud. And then following on from there, I will bring Tony in, who's representing IBM today, to talk about IBM Power Virtual Server, their advantages, their results. And we'll also do a live demo, really just to demonstrate how quick and easy it is for us to be able to spin up disaster recovery and even production services within the IBM cloud. And then later on, we'll finish with some questions and answers. So who are Ekco? Ekco are an Irish-owned and operated business. We operate across Ireland, the UK, and the Netherlands. We're currently doing about 150 million in revenue, and we have lots of different partnerships in the business. So we are primarily a cloud infrastructure business, and our go-to-market strategy is a secure cloud managed services provider. We offer services across cloud consultancy services. We offer managed cloud services, such as obviously managed Azure, managed IBM Cloud, AWS. And as part of the consultancy service, we work with organizations like yourselves to help you on that cloud journey, whether it's a cloud migration, a cloud right-sizing exercise, or a number of other consultancy services that we can provide. In addition to that, we have a workspaces division. So we tend to work with smaller businesses in this part of the organization, whereby we take them to the cloud, we deliver their applications back to them via virtual desktop, and then we wrap a full outsourced managed service around it, including end user support and service desk services. The piece of the business that we're here to talk to you today about is primarily around business continuity. And one of the reasons that we got involved in business continuity, specifically with IBM, is we have been doing Windows business continuity, disaster recovery, and backup for in excess of 20 years now. And for many years, we had to walk away from clients because they had legacy IBM I type series boxes that we just couldn't support. So a number of years ago, we took a strategic decision as a business to get involved with IBM, to partner with them, and to partner with Maxava, so that we could offer a complete end-to-end disaster recovery solution for any business that required it. So from a customer base perspective, you will see us involved heavily in regulated industries like financial services, professional services. So we would work with a lot of the major banks, a lot of the major legal firms, consultancy firms. In addition to that, we work heavily with retail, logistics, manufacturing. So we're quite broad in terms of our customer base. Next slide, please, Tony. So just to put some scale on it, as I said, we operate in actually 13 countries now at this stage. They're not all shown here. Ireland, UK, and Netherlands are our three primary geographies. We've also got a sizable base in the Caribbean, covering multiple islands and multiple countries. North of 800 customers, just under 900 staff, and more than half of those are technical. So we are a very heavy technical orientated business. I think that probably covers the overview. I'm more than happy to answer questions at the end if there's any questions in relation to Ekco themselves. So here's the first poll of our day. If you could take time to answer that, I'll then hand over to Ash.
I think it's always interesting, Mark, where people are on their disaster recovery journey. Nothing surprises me anymore. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we're seeing here, Ash, is pretty typical of what I would expect. Some tape and some on-premise, very little cloud disaster recovery in place.
Yeah. We'll get onto. I guess we'll get onto the reasons for using cloud shortly, but hopefully we can open people's eyes a little bit today with regards to IBMI.
Lots of tape there as well. Okay, I'll hand over to you now, Ash, if you could take it from there.
Wonderful. So I guess why disaster recovery? I'm not really sure which of these bullets is the scariest. So I'm going to talk about them all kind of collectively while you digest them. So I've worked for companies. I've been pretty much involved in IBMI and iSeries and System I and even System 38. So right back to day one, worked for companies in every sector. And pretty much, I was thinking about this yesterday, everyone I've been involved in has suffered a major outage at some stage. I'm sure it's not me, but it's it's from bulldozers cutting through cables, floods, power outages, a major fire, and each one of these resulted in us having to invoke DR. A lot of those instances were physical tape. One was a kind of a rock-up lorry with an IBMI on the back of it. One was a co-location, so there was a real mixed bag there. But fortunately, we had a DR plan in each of those cases. But the disruption was absolutely incredible. And even in the slickest of recoveries, there were outages and the businesses suffered, I guess, what I describe as tangible outages. So I think it's never a question of if you'll need to invoke DR. It's definitely a question of when. I guess on top of this, you have to consider the skills that you have within the business and the fact that there is definitely right now a shortage of skilled IBMI people, and that's only going to go one way. It's only going to get worse, and I see it several years, maybe 5 years, maybe 7 years behind the mainframe and the skill shortages you see there. But I have seen firsthand on several occasions the impact of staff retiring from their IBMI roles, and obviously they retire, but that knowledge goes with them. That person that you can always pick up the phone to or walk round to their desk and say, any idea on this? That's just gone, and it leaves a huge gaping hole. Next slide, Tony, please. So here's an interesting graph. What it's trying to say is that the cost of downtime for over 90% of businesses that were surveyed said that downtime, the hourly downtime now exceeds $300,000 an hour. So 90% now say it exceeds over $300,000 an hour. And the modern world really has little tolerance for downtime and data loss. And nowadays, you also have to consider the kind of non-tangible loss as well. So that of reputational damage with customers and clients all too keen to share their frustration online and their inability to transact with you. It really is very hard work to recover from such outages. Next slide, please, Tony. Okay, if we start to click through here, I think IBMI shops have been kind of somewhat late to the cloud party compared to maybe Linux and Windows, and have really only started to explore public cloud maybe in the last 5 years, maybe 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, I can agree that. Yeah, it's really spinning up the last years, and it's getting further around that one. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, and I think people are starting to get used to it now. But kind of common presents prevailed really, and businesses definitely started off with workloads where there's either no risk or little risk. So typically development and test workloads where it doesn't really impact the user base. It's a bit of an inconvenience if there's a problem, and there isn't huge risk in putting that workload in the cloud. Then we started to see.
Yeah, and to add to that, Ash, yeah, it's really also that they were not familiar with working IBM I in the cloud, so they really wanted to see if it fits them. So yeah, what you mentioned, development tests are secure environments to do the first testing around it one. So yeah, we see the picking up in that area. But then yeah, if we continue,
Yeah,
we
I
see
guess
other
I guess
areas. Yeah.
the next set of workloads that has maybe a little bit more of a risk are kind of demos and training environments. And we at Maxava use the cloud for demo and training environments. So these are environments where you can typically snapshot the LPAR. You can do your training, you can do your demos, and then you revert back to the snapshot. There's no messy restores. That's ideal what the cloud is for. You can reset it back to its original state very quickly. But I spend a lot of time now talking to clients about cloud and cloud migration. There's definitely a trickle, I describe as a trickle, of companies migrating all of their workloads. That includes production to the cloud. We're working with several at the moment with regards to cloud migrations. And a few years back, the thought of migrating these, let's call them legacy, these kind of highly transactional workloads to the cloud would not have been considered. It wasn't even on the horizon. So I think that's a sign of how far things have come, and people are now doing it. But I think, Tony, you'll testify this, probably the most popular use case, and this is backed up with probably the number of attendees we've had on webinars where we've talked about public cloud and DR. That's definitely I guess the most popular use case. And as you'll see as we go forward, it just makes sense in so many ways.
Yeah, and I certainly can describe that there are customers who are going for production like because their company is moving their environment, their total production to the cloud, and then it makes sense to also move IBM I to the cloud. But also, as you mentioned, we see a lot of customers interested in disaster recovery into the cloud and how that really fits them in that area.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think once the question was why would I move that workload to the cloud? Now it's why wouldn't I? So I think there has been a mindset shift definitely in the IBM I community.
Yeah, that's certainly true. The IBM I community is really. I'm now in my current role for 3-4 years, and in the beginning it was interesting cloud, but not for my IBM I environment. And now they are really adopting it, doing the first steps, as you mentioned, with development and test area. But certainly disaster recovery is an interesting area where a lot of customers show interest in, want to see how it goes and see the value add of DR to the cloud.
Absolutely. Next slide, please. Okay, so I guess using the cloud for DR means that you don't need to invest in a second location, a co-location, or a second data center. So you don't need to worry about power, cooling, physical security, all those related costs. There's also no hardware maintenance to pay at all. So that can be quite a substantial cost to individuals. So that disappears. That's covered by the cloud provider. You're not paying for hardware that you hope that you're not going to need. I.e., you hope you don't have to invoke DR. Chances are you will do one day. But I guess the aligning expenditure with revenue, it really relates to production workloads, but there is some, in some respects, it's linked to DR2. You can enable the increasing of resources, so in terms of CPU, disk, and memory, as and when you need to invoke. So 90% of the time, you'll be running a very slim partition in the cloud. If you ever need to invoke, you can ramp those resources up. So there's no need to pay for that additional headroom that you might or might not need one day. And if we're talking about disaster recovery and Maxava, you do need minimum resources on the cloud target. So just enough for the IBMI logical replication apply sessions to tick over and to keep up. And then the final element there, software maintenance or Swarmer. This is another cost that's often overlooked. You don't need to pay this in the cloud as well. It's covered by the cloud provider, and cloud providers such as IBM offer a very generous kind of stack of operating system and license program features. All of that's included as well. So those costs combined make it quite hefty and make it quite an attractive proposition, the cloud. Bonnie.
Yeah, and to align on that, you mentioned you started, of course, with data center cost and the additional hardware and software cost that comes that you are saving for DR. And certainly in a DR environment, we really see, and we have discussed that Ash already earlier with other customers and other use cases, it's now really coming into budget for customers to set up a full worthy DR solution without maintaining a second data center. So it becomes now available into their budget to set it up properly without having paying overloaded. So it's really coming into their budget.
Absolutely. Tommy, I think you're going to talk about hybrid cloud after the second poll, yeah?
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about Power Virtual Server, how it looks like, what it is, what use cases we see reflecting towards what you're already mentioning, but I'm curious about the outcome of this poll.
So this is interesting, really. Some people may consider DR as quite a risky first step into kind of IBM cloud adoption. It's not particularly risky. You don't need any kind of outages at all on production. So whether you've got a DR at the moment or not, it doesn't really matter. And I'm going to talk later about how we get that initial data, that initial seed from A to B. But it is a sensible choice. So if you're debating, if you're thinking about cloud and IBM, it is a sensible choice. And quite often an obvious first step for people. So don't be scared, is what I'd say.
No, true. Yeah, and if we look at how we see within IBM the future, we really think that hybrid is the future. Do we see everything going to the cloud? No. Do we see things all remain on-prem? No. It's really a hybrid future where we see customers for particular reasons saying, I want to keep certain workloads on-prem and other workloads are able to go to the cloud, to Power Virtual Server in this instance. And I think that is really the beauty of the Power Virtual Server offering. It's the same Power Systems environment as on-prem. So it's really 100% compatible. It's the same hardware, it's the same virtualization and the same operating systems as on-prem run into the cloud. And in that way, it's really easy to set up a hybrid environment for production and GR, but also production and test environments. I already mentioned Power Virtual Server. What is Power Virtual Server? Power Virtual Server is IBM's Power in the Cloud offering. We are part of the IBM Cloud, but we have a dedicated environment where we run our own hardware storage and have our own network. And in that way, we are able to deliver Power as an infrastructure as a service solution. So we deliver a virtual machine based on coarse memory, storage, and a connection to the cloud or to the outside world. We have, as mentioned already, the same operating system, the same hardware as customers have on-prem, and we really built up a fully enterprise stack, which is consistent with the architecture as customers have it on-prem. So we deliver the same superior resiliency, the performance and security that customers love about their power systems, but we deliver it now from the cloud. It is supported by Oracle, certified by SAP, and also a lot of IBM ISVs are making this step. We have the compliance in place, and we deliver it really in a flexible way, so that you only pay for what you use. If you need more resources, it's really easy to add more resources. Do you need to downgrade? You can easily go down and only pay for what you use. And currently we have 20 data centers around the world where we offer Power Virtual Server in, and I will show the map later on. As mentioned, Power Virtual Server is part of the IBM Cloud, and in that way we deliver the full cloud advantages that are available. With the connection to the IBM Cloud, we are able to access 200 plus additional services for analytics, AI, languages, multi-languages, machine learning around it one. So we are able to do that. IBM Cloud is perceived as one of the most secure hyperscalers out there. And that combined with the security of power, we are able to really deliver a superior cloud and secure environment when needed. Ash already mentioned about the dependency on skills. You reduce the dependency of skills by moving to the cloud. Flexible to scale and saving plan when needed. And no upfront cost. So really a flexible way of consuming power resources. As mentioned, we are currently 20 data centers across the globe. We have 600 plus more customers deploying their environment in Power VS in the specific use cases, production, HADR, and dev test use cases. I already mentioned the key workloads that we are supporting, SAP, NetWeaver, and HANA area, supported by Oracle. IBM I workloads, we see a lot of traction in that area. Also the last years moving IBM I customers to Power Virtual Server, and of course AX, IBM I, and Linux, and in that case OpenShift is supported on our environments. Compliancy is in place, GDPR, SOC 1 Type 1 and 2, PCI DSS certification for financial institutes, ISO 27K is also in place. And if you are a European customer and you have the demand to have only European technician touching your environment, you can opt in for that, and then only European citizens are touching your environment if needed. And why is that important? Of course, it's for the security. You have the flexible expansion towards the cloud with really the hybrid environment. The same workload supported on-prem as in Power VS, and the same infrastructure as on-prem we have in Power Virtual Server, and in that way a seamless way of working. Where do we see some customer cases that already made the move to Power VS? FNZ is a financial software ISV out of Scotland. They deliver financial applications to the financial industry. They were already developing on IBM I. They spin up an LPAR on-prem, do some testing, see how it goes. It will not go well, bring it down again, do some code modification, spin up an LPAR again, like really using the flexibility of Power on-prem as we know it. But they really made the step towards Power Virtual Server, and they really see the benefit that they can spin it up even faster than on-prem. Within 10 minutes, they have a new virtual server, and in that way, they can test and develop new platforms 15 times more faster than before. So they really see the benefit of Power Virtual Server. IPTOR moved their infrastructure from a data center in Denmark towards our data center in Frankfurt, and they really see the benefits around it one by spinning up faster, getting customers on board faster. Normally took them 2 days, now they can do it in an hour, and also cut the infrastructure cost by 80%. So, and faster deployment and less cost, so really a win-win area. Ekco Gas is from South America. They were running SAP, like a lot of customers who are running SAP were on the journey. Okay, I have to go to HANA. What is the best platform to run my SAP? They tested SAP HANA on Power Virtual Server. They were really happy with the performance and the delivery of that. They say, okay, that's great, but due to compliancy reasons, we want to have our production on-prem. They purchased Power boxes on-prem for that, but said, hey, what we have seen in Power Virtual Server is really great. We benefit about that. And they said, we will run our dev test environment in Power VS. And in that way, they really build up a hybrid environment. Where we see the revolution of IBM I disaster recovery. Ash.
Thank you, Tony. Yes, I guess this is where we all started with IBM I. We had a single server. We were quite happy with it. It's often considered kind of bulletproof, suffering very little failures. There's some press in the industry that talks to this. Everyone was happy. And if you click through this kind of animated slide, Tony, but at some stage, it started off with the kind of financial sector, the banks, the building societies, the insurance companies. They needed a higher availability. So they started investing in co-locations. But hey, it's expensive for all the reasons we talked about earlier. Maintaining a co-location just on the chance that you might need to switch to that co-location. And then what came next is maybe a partner. There's many partners out there that have their own power clouds. They've acquired hardware themselves and they run a power cloud. So not a true cloud. So it's typically they're not clouds where you can turn up and down the CPU disk and memory, but they're power clouds all the same. So that was a kind of a known cost going forward. But what we started to see is the last bullet, and that's really what we're talking about today. So this is using the public cloud and IBM's Power Virtual Server for that target partition, or the A to B journey. So you'll all be somewhere on that journey. Hopefully, we can take you to the end of that journey, and we can start using the public cloud for disaster recovery. And as Tony's going to actually show you now, he's a brave man. He's going to show you a live demonstration of Power Virtual Server.
Yeah, let's find out if after the demonstration I still think it's a good idea, but let's see. If it's good, you now see my cloud dashboard.
Yes.
Can you confirm? Yes. Okay. This is where you log in your IBM Cloud account. And then, of course, you say, okay, I want to set up a Power environment. Then you go to search in the catalog for Power. And then you see workspaces. First, you have to create a workspace before you can deploy virtual machines. And I have already several workspaces in my environment with several names. And for this case, I go to the webinar demo workspace, and I'm going to see what virtual servers are in that environment. You see already here, if you create a workspace, you have to say which area do you want to run. I already mentioned that we have 20 data centers around the globe. We have Sao Paulo in South America. We have Washington and Dallas in the US, Tokyo and Toronto in Canada. We have London in the UK. We have Frankfurt and Madrid in Europe. We have Sydney in Australia, and Osaka and Tokyo in Japan. And we are on the point to release a new data center in India, in Chennai. So when you create a workspace, you say, okay, I want to select where I want to have my environment. But what you then more or less say is really creating a data center. There's nothing in the data center yet, but you want to populate the data center, and then you go to the data, to the virtual machines in your environment, in your workspace. And you will see that there is nothing there yet. If we get there and my connection is, isn't that always interesting Come on. Hope my connection is stable enough. And as already mentioned, I was a brave man, but normally it works well.
So Tony, just while I went for that up here, a workspace is in effect a virtual data center. You just pick geographically where you want it, and you start to build up your server instances in that virtual data center.
Correct. And there's nothing in, so you can really spin up several workspaces if you need. There's nothing in that area, so you can really do what you want. And I will refresh my screen to see what that is better. Come on. Yeah. Create an instance, and when you create an instance, it's really looking like an HMC. You are creating an LPAR. We call it a virtual machine. Now, give it a name. Let's call it Ekco. The amount of instances of with the same profile as this one, I will keep it to 1. You can add it to a shared processor pool if needed, like on-prem. We can do pinning of a virtual machine so that it resists on the server where you are creating that. Certainly specific IBM I applications sometimes are serial number depending, and in that way it makes sense to pin your virtual machine to a specific server, so you can choose if you want it or not, and select an SSH key, continue, and then select which boot image you want, which operating system do you want to provide, what do you want to run, AX, IBM I, Linux, specific Linux environments for your SAP HANA, for your NetWeaver, but you can also bring your own license for Linux. I will go for IBM I, then you say, okay, if I select IBM I, which version do I want to run? I pick 7.4 for this one, fetching the extra details. And then you can also say, hey, I want to add additional license programs towards that. You need to select a software of a storage tier that you want to select. We have 4 tierings around it one, depending on how fast you need your environment. We have tier 0, tier 1, tier 3, and flexible IOPS coming from 25 IOPS per gigabyte to 3 IOPS per gigabyte for tier 3, and really fast with the flexible IOPS there. For the sake, I will select tier 3. And for the people who are looking at the right hand side of the screen, you really see the choices that I made have impact on what the cost of this environment is. And this is just a list pricing environment, but you can see what's happening there. Select an auto-selected pool, go further, continue, and then I need to select which machine I will run my environment on. We have scale-out boxes and high-end boxes in our environment, S922s, E980s. We also have Power 10 boxes in our environment, the 1022s and the 1080s. I will select an S922 in this case. You can select if you want a capped or an uncapped core, or even can go for dedicated cores. The cores are steps by a quarter of a core, but if I select and dedicated, you will see I will have 1 core, and it will go by 1 due to the fact that it is dedicated, so you get the whole core. And with uncapped and shared, you have a purge partition of part of the core. You can select the number of cores that you want. You can select how big your memory size will need to be. You go to continue, create the volume that you want to have here. For your storage, you can select the size of that storage, how many of those storage devices you want. The tiering again, as in the previous card, and then you can click create and attach, and it will be attached to this virtual machine that you are having. Then continuing, then you select the networking piece that you want, the public networking or not, on, off, and then you see that everything is selected, and at the end is, then you go to finish, you see everything there. And if I'm agreeing with the terms and condition and the pricing that I have, and I have done everything right, I set that click box, and then I create, and a virtual machine will spin up. And that takes some time to spin up, and due to this I will not show it, but if you then go back to my workspaces, go to this environment, there is already a virtual machine created. And then when that shows up, you can open a console, and this case is an AX environment. Let's see if it pops up due to the sharing mode. Yep. Then you see the environment, the console is opening, and you see like traditional AX screen, but if you have an IBM I screen, you will see the traditional green screens that you are familiar with, and in that way you have created an environment just like you create an LPAR on an on-premise box. And by showing this, and this clicking to really shows how easy it is to set up that environment, create an environment, and spin it up, and in that way it's easy to go. I want to show you one other stuff. If I go back to the catalog and look for Power, we also have deployable architectures already in place. And with a deployable architecture, the creating of an LPAR is of a virtual machine, as I showed, is not that big, but of course there's some things to do, and maybe you have to set up a separate networking environment. With deployable architecture, it's even much easier to create an environment with everything around it one. So you create the workspace, you create a virtual machine, and you create the network connection to the outside world with just 1 or 2 clicks. You can go to the virtual Power VS Quick Start, see more in that area, review, deploy optimizations. You can see what you have. You can add it to a project, go to the CLI or work with code. But if you want to deploy it by schematics, you really can configure what you want, which environment you want to have. But also we have already t-shirt sizes available where you can really say, hey, I want to pick up a t-shirt size of an environment, move towards that and really deploy. It's really easy what you want and how you want to go forward on that. So that is really the next step in easement of deployment of an environment. So it's not difficult to create an environment, but we even make it more easier with a deployable architecture where you can really pick the t-shirt sizes to do the development around it one.
It's worth mentioning, Tony, as well. Obviously, all of this would be done on your behalf as part of the managed service delivered by Ekco.
Yeah, correct. And that's really a strong point, of course, that we work with our partners. We deliver the infrastructure as a service, and Ekco really is able to deliver the service on top to make it really easy for you to make that step. They can deploy, they will take care of your environment and make it really easy to make that journey to the cloud.
And one other thing, Tony, that is probably worth pointing out, that I guess what you've shown during the demonstration will be quite new to many people. Once you actually say, I want to open the console, everything is identical to what you used to now. You can get to SST, you can get to DST, absolutely identical. You get a green screen console that emulates a 5250. So up until that point, it might be different, but once you get the console, everything is exactly the same.
Correct. And that is really the strong point of Power Virtual Server. It's the identical architecture that customers are used to have on-prem. They have worked with Power and IBM I for years. We celebrated last year 35 years of IBM I, so they are really familiar with that way of working, and we really adopted that way of working because we know that is a proven way of working. We did develop that also in Power Virtual Server, so customers really have a seamless way of moving from on-prem towards Power Virtual Server with the same look and feel as they are used to have for years already on-prem. All right, let's continue with our presentation. Ash, what is the benefits of Maxava?
Yes, yeah, thank you. I guess we've talked loosely about the services offering that that Ekco provide. We've talked about the hardware. Maxava HA is I guess it's the vehicle to get your data from A to B or from source to target. So everything is underpinned by Maxava HA. So this is a mature IBM I solution built on remote journaling, which is the most efficient way to get data from A to B, wherever A and B are, in this instance, on-premise to the cloud. The solution is capable of replicating, I guess, traditional data, the IFS with the virtual and limited apply sessions, and of course IBM MQ. I know there's a lot of kind of financial customers that run MQ. And the way Maxava has been designed means that it uses negligible resources on the source or production server. So we do things slightly differently to our competitors. In fact, we don't need any jobs at all running on the source server. So we do all of our processing away from the production users. We think that they're the most important, and we don't want to start using CPU cycles on the source box. So our processing takes place away from that. It comes, the software comes complete with the ability to perform a simulated role swap. So a simulated role swap is a role swap without impacting the users. So the user community will not know anything about it at all, but we can simulate a role swap. All takes care of itself, and there's lots of self-monitoring and self-healing built into the product. As I say, it's a mature product. It looks after itself very well, so you don't need to be spending hours and hours each day, either you or Ekco, actually looking after it. Next slide, please, Tony. So Maxava HA is just really one of three solutions that Maxava offer. The others being MI8. You just click through here, Tony. There should be another wheel hopefully appear. Yeah, the other being MI8 at the top of that wheel there. So this is a cloud-based, it's that word again, a cloud-based multi-platform monitoring tool that has the capability to monitor not only IBM I, what we're talking about today, but also AIX, Linux, and Windows servers. So that can be used by yourself as an end customer, or it can be used by Ekco to manage your boxes for you. And then the third solution is CPR, or Capture Point Restore. This is an IBM I solution that enables you to take point-in-time snapshots of critical IBM I data before changes occur. So, for example, you can identify a key set of files that are key to your business. You can identify key commands you want to protect that data from, and CPR will jump in before there are any changes to that data and take an archive. If you need to roll it back, you can use CPR to roll it back. So they can be time-based or event-based snapshots that we can take. So these products can all be used individually, but there is a certain synergy when you start to knit or use them together. Thank you, Tony.
Mark?
Thanks, Ash. So this is just really to talk about the Ekco managed service, and as I mentioned at the start of the webinar, we've been providing DR services for over 20 years now, primarily initially across Windows workloads, and more recently, as in the last 5 or 6 years, in specifically IBM I and IBM Cloud. So we really are experts at providing disaster recovery, and then providing disaster recovery services with contractual guarantees and SLAs to back those up in terms of how quickly we can make those workloads available to you. So I suppose the overall objective of our DR as a service platform and offering is to reduce the complexity and give you that peace of mind that when you need those workloads, they're going to be available to you. One area I didn't mention at the start of the webinar is our extensive security portfolio. So we have a very, very extensive security team that looks after everything from governance, risk and compliance all the way through to full managed security services. And as part of that, we leverage that team then to enhance the security serverings around our backup and disaster recovery offerings. Next slide, please, Tony. So another poll here. Appreciate if you could respond to this one, please. Would you consider moving your entire production environment to the cloud?
That's an interesting one, Mark. I think if you'd have asked me 5 years ago, I'd have said no or no chance. I've warmed over the years, and as I said earlier on, I'd ask myself the question, why not now? I'd need to come up for a reason why not.
Yeah, I think we've seen a significant change in that as well, Ash, and particularly in relation to IBM I. I mean, you're absolutely right. People were very, very slow to move those workloads to the cloud based on how critical they typically are to the business, and there was a lot of fear around it. It's good to see that things are changing, though.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, and there's really adoption and more interest in that area. If you visit the several IBM I communities, like the common events or local common events, we really see more focus, more interest around cloud-based solutions and what is possible in that area. So that really shows that there is interest and that customers are looking for other ways to consume their beloved IBM I environment.
Excellent. Next slide, please, Tony. So we're coming towards the end of the webinar now. So some key takeaways. Obviously, we've discussed disaster recovery and the potential move of even production to the cloud. One of the things we want you to take away is that it is easier than you think to achieve, and especially when you work with a partner like ourselves who can provide it as a managed service. So don't be afraid to consider it as an option. We also touched on the fact that obviously the IBM I infrastructure has been rock solid for 30 plus years now and rarely goes down. But that infrastructure is starting to age, so maybe time to rethink that DR strategy. Maybe time to start to consider some cloud options, but I guess most importantly, consider, what is the risk to the business? What's the impact to the business if that box does fail, and for example, you have to revert to some form of tape backup rather than a potential cloud disaster recovery service. And I suppose the final part of it, we've touched on this in the previous slide around our managed DR expertise. We have been a managed DR partner now for many companies for 20 plus years. So we really are experts in that area, and the combination of our expertise and our partners in the forms of Maxava and IBM will leave your business in a very solid foundation for disaster recovery. Next slide, please, Tony. So one of the things we can offer today is, if you are interested in discussing it further, we're happy to offer a proof of concept. That's typically a 30-day proof of concept that would see us replicate one LPAR from your IBM I up into the cloud and allow you to test that DR functionality. We typically look to agree some form of success criteria with you as part of that process. But if you're interested, feel free to contact us after this webinar, and we can get that set up for you. Ash, Tony, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I was just going to say we're running a few proof of concepts at the moment in different regions, actually. Yeah, some people are looking to kind of replicate everything and then do a role swap. Some people will just be happy seeing some data going from A to B. So whatever your success criteria is, just talk to us and we can agree what would spell success for you.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and that proof of concept really will show how easy it is to adopt the cloud in your environment, even if you don't have any experience with it yet. But it's really showing how easy it is to use and move forward on that, and shows that it is a good opportunity for you to set up your DR in Power VS.
Terrific. And I think that brings us to the Q&A. Yes, it does. So I'd like to open it up to the floor at this point for any questions. If you do have some questions, pop them into the chat box and we can answer them for you. So while we're waiting, guys, some of the typical questions that I get asked in my engagements with clients tend to be around migration and performance. So maybe Ash, one of the questions I get regularly is how do I migrate my data to Power Virtual Server? Is that something that you could take for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. If it's a production workload, it's a lot harder. A disaster recovery workload or a test or dev workload's a lot easier. And it's often the biggest headache is getting that considerable amount of data, historical data, from on-prem to cloud. Definitely more challenging from production, but there's kind of a number of methods, and there's not a right or wrong here. But the cloud and Power Virtual Server, they typically provide the OS, the license programs. So getting your data there, it's typically a combination of kind of good old-fashioned save and restore and FTP. There's no tape drives in the cloud. There's virtual tape libraries. They can be used. BRMS can be used. BRMS with a bolt-on program, a bolt-on license program called ICC, enables you to write to IBM Cloud Storage. So you can still keep doing your BRMS backups and have ICC write to the IBM Cloud Storage and use it as a kind of intermediary location. And then Power Virtual Server can talk to that location and you can restore from there. There's Power VC, which enables you to create a kind of an OVA or an image of an LPAR as well. So there's a combination of things, but what we tend to find is horses for courses, really. It's normally two of those things that you use. And then we use Maxava to kind of knit it all together. So Maxava will keep your on-prem source box and your cloud target in sync all the time. So if you ever need to roll swap, the data's ready for you. If you're talking about full migration to the cloud, you could just use logical replication alone. In fact, you could do that for disaster recovery. You could just say, I want to replicate all of this data to the cloud, and Maxava will it'll trickle away, it will chug away, and everything will get there eventually. And that's often the most popular way to do disaster recovery, at least to get that target seeded to begin with. So lots of different ways, that no right or wrong answer. But we would talk to you. It's normally around the amount of data that we're talking.
Okay, and if a client happens to be running another IBM replication tool, is that a problem?
No, not at all. We can work alongside other tools and we actually have quite a pedigree in swapping out competitive software. In fact, we've got a migration tool that fast tracks this process, so that's not a problem. Something I omitted to cover earlier, Mark, was you mentioned kind of performance, monitoring the performance of the LPAR. It's worth remembering, as soon as you get that console, that green screen console, everything you've used on premise is still valid. So collection services can be used to perform monitoring. as can Navigator for I. Or you could use Maxava's MI8 monitor, or our friends at Ekco could monitor and manage that environment for you with MI8. So the answer is yes. It depends exactly what you want.
Okay, and Tony, in relation to IBM I licenses, a question we regularly get asked is, they've paid for licenses, they're currently using them on premise, and can they move them to the cloud?
Yeah, we offer for customers who currently have software maintenance active the ability to move their license to Power Virtual Server, and in that way recollect that or recognize that they have been a loyal customer for us for years, and we can kind of offer them a substantial better price in Power Virtual Server, and then they have to purchase new licenses. So certainly, if you are currently using IBM I with software maintenance active, have the discussion around IBM I mobility, and we make a great you a good offer around it.
Terrific. Okay, I don't see any more questions coming in, so I'd like to thank my co-hosts Ash and Tony for supporting us in this webinar. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. I hope you've found it useful. We have recorded this webinar. We'll send it out to you. My contact details will be in that email. So if you have any questions, or if you'd like to set up that proof of concept, feel free to make contact with me directly. Thanks for joining today, and have a good day.
Thanks everyone.
Bye-bye.